What is going on? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be reviewing PFF's NFL Mock Draft 4.0 for the 2024 NFL Draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Y'all know how to use YouTube at this point. Below my face is my board. Below that are the great ways to get involved even more with the community, as well as take advantage of our two sponsors, Olipop as well as UnderDog Fantasy. Feel free to take advantage of those, and those links will also be in the description. So, this mock draft is made by Trevor Sikkema. Whenever Trevor gets to make content, I love to review it. We actually talked about Connor Rogers earlier in the year, and Connor said he wanted to come on the show. So naturally, got to have that second half of the stock exchange. Trevor, big fan of you. Obviously, I think everybody in this draft community looks up to NFL Stock Exchange at this point. So would love to have you on the show. Obviously, just a humble invitation. Obviously, I'm going to continue showing you respect regardless. You kick ass 24/7. I will be seeing probably y'all in Mobile, so that should be pretty fun too. So Senior Bowl is going to be great. Let's get into this though, because yes, I mean, we all have lives here. You don't need to hear me talk 24/7. This is not going to be essentially a long ass podcast for no reason. So let's get into this. Let's have some fun. Starting out with the number 1 overall selection, the Bears end up getting Caleb Williams. So there are 3 pretty much tiers of thought. There's 3 paths that you can go with the first overall pick. It is trade out, which is what a lot of people are now starting to become in favor of, since, with Howie Roseman developing the Eagles and naturally continuing to trade down, accruing first round picks, even when the team is extremely talented, it's shown that you can both get quantity and quality, even when your team is extremely talented. So it is understandable, naturally accrue some extra picks, still get playmakers, etc. There's the take the Marvin Harrison Jr. at 1 route, which, he probably is the best player in the class. In my opinion, he is the best player in the class. It is what it is. And, you end up pairing him up with DJ Moore. You trust Justin Fields and just say, Justin's our guy. We're going to put everything around him that makes total sense. And then you have the other route, which is going to be going Caleb Williams. So here's the logic on Caleb. So the reason why this pick is so contentious is because there's 3 very logical routes. And people are going to get very opinionated on which logical route they want to go after and then say every other one is illogical. Guys, it's okay to disagree and still understand that, naturally, all 3 picks or all 3 moves have their warrants. So, they have their merits. That's the correct phrase. So I think this pick makes total sense, but I also think both of those other moves make total sense. It just depends on what you think of Justin Fields and what you think of the contract situation. With Caleb Williams, he has very similar strengths to Justin. He's a great playmaker. He's very athletic. He processes, honestly, pretty damn well. I think he processes better than Justin Fields, but, Justin has been taking steps up. Justin's progressing, and he's almost starting to get to that exponential part, and that's kind of what we were hoping for a year ago. It's a little bit of a late bloom, but, better late than never, correct? So Justin Fields is a phenomenal player. The Bears have this number 1 pick from trading down as well, so you never know. Lightning does strike twice. But Justin, he's a phenomenal player. He has a little bit more size than Caleb. He, I believe, is taller than Caleb as well, because I think Caleb's around 6'1". So, naturally there are those disadvantages to Caleb, which is the size, potential injury concerns when that comes in because he's such a good playmaker. Naturally you get scared shitless if he ends up, randomly doing a bailout of the pocket and then gets blindsided by, Myles Garrett. So, naturally there is certainly some justified concerns with Caleb Williams. People compare him to, crybabies and such. And, I don't see that. Naturally, yes, he sometimes shows too much emotion on the sidelines and, he's crying in his mom's arms. So naturally, if I were extremely pissed and, I feel like I let my whole entire team down, maybe it's not the best to be seen in public crying in your mom's arms. But I mean, you can pretty much empathize with a guy when you feel like you lost your whole entire team, which in college is over 100 players on that roster, lost it for over 100 people. They were relying on you and you feel like you lost it for them. It's understandable why you'd be overcome with emotions. But yeah, he's a little bit awkward off the field. Don't feel like that's really stopped anybody. So maybe he doesn't get any, State Farm commercials. Might be a good thing. You never know. But regardless, on the field, Caleb Williams is a phenomenal talent. It's just a long-winded way of saying this makes sense. So do the other moves. At pick number 2, the Washington Commanders go Drake Maye out of North Carolina. So The Commanders end up replacing a UNC quarterback with a UNC quarterback. Different systems. Drake Maye, I believe, wanted to transfer out of UNC because of the fact that he was like, I'm not going to this same exact system that Sam Howell was in for my final year before the draft. And, system changed. He ends up, being a very talented quarterback. I don't understand why he necessarily loses to teams that I don't believe he should necessarily lose to. Again, football is a 53-man sport, in college more, but just for the sake of simplicity, we'll just call it a 53-man sport. And at the same time, there are a lot of factors that are not just quarterback play. Drake Maye's high upside, like his high-end plays are phenomenal. Then my big issue with him is that it's more up and down than, consistently up, which, you see guys like Patrick Mahomes, they also have similar tendencies. But, I think that we're betting. I had this issue with Trey Lance. We're betting on this to become this. Like, you're expecting the lows to be brought up. And, with certain teams, that totally is logical. I don't know if I trust the Commanders necessarily with the offensive line they have and, pretty much being a super loaded weapons roster to encourage a quarterback to reduce his negative side. It's more so emphasizing the positives, right? That's why Sam Howell is so hot and cold. We all know I love Sam Howell. He was my QB1 of that class. But that whole entire class is kind of butt cheeks at this point. So that's not really saying much. However, Drake Maye, his upside plays are phenomenal. And I do think he could work here. It's just, I don't know with the poor offensive line that they do have in terms of tackles that I would trust, especially someone who is not afraid of taking contact like Drake. And I don't really trust him to, last that long. I just don't trust it. I don't trust it. But again, I see the logic there. The New England Patriots then select Jayden Daniels at 3. It's pretty logical. This team needs a quarterback desperately. Jayden Daniels is my quarterback 2. Phenomenal playmaker, far more pinpoint accurate than I expected for somebody which just a couple years ago had the second, if not number 1, highest uncatchable throw rate, which was over 50% there at ASU, which is wild. But, he's improved his game tremendously. People say, oh, it might just be the talent that's around him. But to hit a moving target that's probably moving 22 miles per hour on a legitimate dime, like you're talking about probably a 1-foot window. This guy could fit into that 1-foot window. That is very, very impressive. Now, another player that is not shy of contact, and I just don't get it, but there's also not a ton of full field processing here. And he does like to bail out with his legs, but at the same time, he can because he's dynamic as a playmaker. Bottom line, Jayden Daniels, phenomenal player. Solid pick at pick number 3. At pick 4 for the Arizona Cardinals, they select Marvin Harrison Jr., pretty much the logical selection if the Cardinals are going to sit here at 4. They need a wide receiver 1 that is reliably healthy and can fight through pretty much anything. That's Marvin Harrison Jr. So I just don't really feel like there's much need to fully elaborate on this. I know the Cardinals needs a lot of help on defense, but with 6 top 100 picks, you could be fine continuing to fill needs with proper value. And that's what you did last year. On day 2, you did a phenomenal job. You got Garrett Williams. You got Michael Wilson, B.J. Ojolari. All of some of them, like all those guys were my guys as well. So I was a huge fan of your day 2 moves. And I would trust it. You have a lot of day 2 picks. You're going to get some good fallers. Guys are going to fall that I never expect to fall. And you're probably going to be the team to scoop them up. Take that as a big compliment. I do trust how y'all draft. At pick number 5, the New York Giants select Malik Neighbors. It's a logical move. They can't go QB, go after the best playmaker that's left. And, you could potentially trade out, but this team has 2 second-round picks. I don't know if they're really starving for more if you can end up getting a true dynamic playmaker, which they've been looking for a very long time, ever since OBJ left. At pick number 6, the Los Angeles Chargers select tackle Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. Essentially, we're going to be sliding him to right tackle. For me, I love the right tackle class. That's why I'm like, well, if you want to go tackle, I'd be going after the right tackle side because, again, I think there's 3 legitimate starting right tackles. And that's in Talise Fuaga, who, I put my balls on the table and took a big risk loving him early on. I'm pretty lucky by the fact that it ended up working out. Y'all know what happened with Isaiah McGuire last year. It is what it is. But, Talise Fuaga, huge fan of him early on. Saw the potential, ended up being right about that one. That's a guy who I would love for the Chargers. If you want to go right tackle, I'd trade back. I don't think there's an extreme demand for the right tackles to where you can't end up picking up more picks for a team that is desperate for a corner two, extra defensive interior help, another weapon there. If you're not going to go Brock Bowers, I would be like, there might be some teams that are really looking for that left tackle or Brock Bowers. But regardless, Joe Alt's not a bad pick by any stretch. Naturally, it makes sense. He is a sturdy, great, consistent tackle. And, moving left to right tackle, it could be an issue because we've seen that with Evan Neal. But again, that's why I personally would rock with the right tackles, because I do think they compete talent-wise with the left. I am also probably of the minority with that opinion. But regardless, Tennessee Titans then select the remaining left tackle in Olu Fashanu. I have absolutely zero issues with this. Some people say Brock Bowers is a better selection, but for the Titans, I honestly just want to continue protecting Will Levis. Obviously, he's not even playing this week because of an injury. So let Will Levis be the commander of your team and allow him to be protected. That's the key. Build an offensive line. Build from the trenches out. Don't overcomplicate it. A lot of people love the flash and, the big plays. But in reality, consistency and healthiness and health overall, that's going to be what can actually win you a championship. At pick number 8, the New York Jets select Talise Fuaga. So just talked about him. Fell in love with Talise. Ends up being, one of my draft darlings, and very lucky for that because, again, I've had some pretty big misses in there, and, I own up to it. But at the same time, what I do owe y'all is going to be honesty. The Jets can probably use him either side, so it really just depends where you want to. Do you want a day one impact with Talise at right tackle, or do you want him to be the long-term left? It doesn't really matter. You're getting a great value here with a superstar, high upside, great run blocking, developing pass blocking tackle. At pick number 9, the Atlanta Falcons select Michael Penix Jr. So obviously Penix is on the rise ever since his phenomenal performance in the Sugar Bowl. Naturally he is a really talented quarterback. I don't think anybody's doubted the talent. The arm talent is incredible. And those high-end plays, again, similar to Drake Maye, those high-end plays are jaw-dropping. And, naturally, everybody says, well, what if we could limit the negatives? Like, what if we could limit those left field reads where he just randomly throws it to a defender? It's happened a couple of times in his career. It's kind of weird. Or what if we can make sure he stays healthy? There's some negatives to his game, absolutely, which is primarily due to health. But he's a phenomenal quarterback. The Falcons do need someone who's willing to have the balls to throw it deep and, give Drake London and Kyle Pitts an actual chance to be Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I'm not going to shame this pick by any stretch. I don't think that I would select Michael Penix at this value, but for a team that is so damn talented and really is limited by their quarterback position, this is a high wins above replacement selection. I think that this would be something that could push Atlanta into the playoffs as long as Michael stays healthy. Even in that Sugar Bowl, you really did get to see his lower body mechanics, which has been his primary issue in terms of his overall mechanics, improve. There's a particular play that I ended up reposting on Twitter that my buddy Devin Jackson from the Philadelphia Inquirer, shout out to him, ended up posting where, he ended up slipping through and just being able to maneuver the pocket properly and absolutely rip it over the middle. It was a work of art because he actually had much better torque than I expected, what I'd seen before. And, lower body mechanics has been a big issue for him. He's just pretty much armed it very much over his career. So to see that he's still developing that's what made me fall in love again with Anthony Richardson last year during the pre-draft process, is just seeing him continue to work on his form. There's just a lot of other issues that, I'm really loving that to see that Michael Penix is improving on. So regardless, moving on, the Chicago Bears select Rome Odunze at pick 10. Rome Odunze at his frame with the tenacity of somebody who has played through a broken rib and a punctured lung. Like, I'm just going to continue bringing that phrase up over and over again because to me, that matters almost more than pure talent. If you have the talent to be on the field, then it really, to me, matters. Well, one, whether your quarterback's going to give you the opportunity to show your talent, but two, are you going to continue working your ass off? I don't think that I have any doubts that Rome Odunze has work ethic issues. I mean, if you play through those issues, through those injuries, you are an absolute beast. So tip my cap to Rome Odunze. The Bears could absolutely use him as a wide receiver too there with DJ Moore. I'm still trying to get around on the field to loving the talent, but I love the personality. I think that'd be a solid selection for the Bears at 10. At pick 11, the Las Vegas Raiders go Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. I've done this selection myself. He's a super, super smart corner. Instincts off the charts. I do think he needs to get a little bit better in terms of man-to-man coverage at 185. That, 6'2", 185. He's not the best frame, right? You want to see a little bit more weight on there, which he'll probably add in the NFL. But at the moment, looking at his prospect right now, if he goes to somebody who knows how to train those corners who, like, naturally you don't really need to get Nate more instinct or more field awareness. You want to make sure that he is more comfortable in his negative categories. So I think this could be a great spot. It just depends on the coaching. It really does. AP's phenomenal. I love the energy he brings to this team. I honestly hope that he does stay. We'll see what happens with the quarterback situation, but I do understand a lot of people are lower on Bo Nix than I am. So there you go. So Nate Wiggins, solid selection. If you're not going to go QB, cornerback is far from a bad position to target. At pick number 12, there's Bo. Minnesota Vikings selected Bo Nix out of Oregon. This is a team where I was talking about for the Raiders, I believe. Yeah, 90% sure it was the Raiders. I was saying, I'm not going to take Michael Penix for, the injury concerns. Like, it's not a team that is, in quotes, desperate enough to take red flags, right? You can go after players that kind of lack those red flags and, get legitimate starters everywhere. And then, drop a quarterback in when the proper value is there. Ended up, of course, drafting a quarterback in the 3rd round for the Raiders. And, you can go check out the video for that. But the Minnesota Vikings, they're kind of desperate for a quarterback. If you don't get Kirk Cousins to come back, this is a team that, again, at 7-9, similar to the Falcons, have an almost elite roster. Now, Danielle Hunter as well as Marcus Davenport are up for contracts. That's going to be an issue in its own. But this is still a team that can totally use a quarterback. And I think you'll bring back a minimum of one of those edge rushers, especially with that Kirk money now being available. Bo Nix would be a very fine selection for the Vikings. At pick number 13, the New Orleans Saints select Jared Verse, a phenomenal player. It's another team that could use a quarterback, but at the same time, the value is just simply not there. Jared Verse, he is an incredible edge rusher. He has been consistently since he came from Albany. And, seeing him play through an injury all of last year and still being worth a 1st-round pick. Talked about Rome Odunze. Personality is a big thing for me. And, Jared Verse, he ends up, staying surprisingly, even though he should have been a 1st-round pick last year. And, I don't know if he's really boosted his draft stock because he's still the exact same player that we saw that he was. But that exact same player was an absolute freak show. And the only reason he would have been maybe not a top 10 to 15 pick last year is because he played half of the year injured. This year, he demonstrated a ton of power, and that's something that I didn't see overwhelmingly from his game before the way I do see it now. And I love seeing that development because naturally you need a nice balance of, to make it simple, finesse and power. Jared Verse, phenomenal player. The Saints, I don't feel like they need edge rusher as badly as, this pick suggests, but best player available, it's the smart thing to do a lot of times. Most of those successful franchises have pretty much gone primarily best player available. So Jared Verse going to be the future for Cam Jordan there. At pick number 14, the Denver Broncos go Troy Franklin. That's some respect on Troy Franklin's name. I really do like Troy Franklin. I don't believe that he is in this category for me. But Denver Broncos definitely could use a compliment to Courtland Sutton for the future. I want a 1-2 punch. And, they have other options, right? But one of them, I'm not even going to name them. One of them, let's just say, not the most emotionally reliable and kind of has been a letdown since being a 1st-round pick. Cough, cough, Jerry Jeudy. But you also have some health issues with the rest. Tim Patrick, we all know this dude has not been reliably healthy. So it makes sense to go after a wide receiver for this team. Now, with the idea that, Russ is not going to be there most likely, quarterbacks certainly should be on their radar. But the first line of this description says it perfectly. There's no reason to take QB6. Don't force a need. Don't do it. You don't want a 30 to 32 starter number 30 to 32 starter on your board or on your team because you're desperate to take one. Have the 35th best quarterback and take one of the best players at a different position. That's what BPA is all about. Because naturally, you'll eventually find somebody to be your quarterback that can actually be a top 15 guy. And that's going to help out your team a hell of a lot more than just forcing the 6th best quarterback here. So I love the idea of transitioning away from a quarterback if the value is not there. At pick 15, the Seattle Seahawks go Jerzon Johnny Newton out of Illinois. Yes, he goes by Johnny Newton. His coaches call him Johnny Newton. I don't know why people get frustrated when I call him Johnny Newton, but it is what it is. Seahawks could definitely use some help on the defensive interior. Jerzon Newton would be an absolute addition. He's the best defensive interior in the class, no doubt about it. A little bit undersized, but he has incredible power and the speed he has. It was that Wisconsin game just a little bit over a year and a half ago it might have been a year ago. Who knows? But the previous season that really caught my eye. He just went on a beeline for the quarterback, and I was like, there's no way. Like, this guy's ridiculous. So super excited to see what he's going to do in the NFL. Crazy athlete. He's going to be a combine monster, in my opinion. We'll see what happens, and a great technician. Of course, Brock Bowers falls to the Cincinnati Bengals at 16. Trevor. There's no reason why Brock should be here. But if the Bengals see him at 16, you bet your ass. Like, I think the Bengals would trade up for him. If we were to project where he should have gone, in my opinion, I probably would have said the Saints at this point. They could use another weapon. Not the Raiders. Raiders are one of the teams I don't think are going to bite on that. Honestly, I mean, it's kind of hard to find a place. I'd just probably say the Saints just because of the fact it's BPA. But, Brock Bowers is such a good weapon. I mean, the Bengals, I will pop a bottle of champagne. I actually made this rule just for the 2022 draft. I said if the Bengals end up getting Tyler Linderbaum, I'd pop a bottle of champagne. I lied. I ended up drinking that bottle during the entire draft or during the entire first round. But, you can feel free to check out that embarrassing video. There's 3.5 hours of it after all. But regardless, I will pop a bottle of champagne or take a shot or do something if the Bengals somehow, some way get Brock Bowers. At pick 17, the Arizona Cardinals select Dallas Turner. Ooh, so B.J. Ojulari was my guy in the top 10 of my board last year for edge rusher. Dallas Turner's my number 4 player this year, but I don't really think that I'm like that crazy high on Dallas Turner. Naturally, there's people who will have him in their top 10. Makes sense. But regardless, Dallas Turner's my edge 1. Arizona Cardinals definitely could use his skill set. I love how versatile he is. He's actually really good in coverage too. Like overall, Dallas Turner is going to be an asset to whatever team he's on. The Cardinals naturally just need to get some wins in terms of getting actual hits on their picks. I'd be fine with it. At selection 18, I don't know why I'm saying selection. At pick 18, the Pittsburgh Steelers, my team selects J.C. Latham out of Alabama. I'm perfectly fine with this one. Naturally, I have been looking for a succession plan for Dan Moore, and Broderick Jones is that succession plan. He's been playing a lot of right tackle, but we're going to be kicking him full time to left. J.C. Latham going to come in and play that right tackle spot. Naturally, I think I've said naturally a billion times. That's been my thing this week. I mean, people have talked about it in my mock draft too. So apologies about that. I have my little ticks, but it'll be gone out next week. I think that the right move would be to go Amarius Mims because I'm a sucker for storylines and I love the idea of Broderick Jones, Amarius Mims. That's my thing. But J.C. Latham, I would not be grouchy about. So fine with that pick. Building the offensive line is this offensive line plus Ben Roethlisberger is what made the Pittsburgh Steelers. You had the weapons in there too, but we're great at sniping them. So a lot of teams, their identity and their success comes from dominating in the trenches. Steelers, we've been slacking in that category for a hot minute now. Glad to have it back. The Green Bay Packers then select Cooper DeJean at pick 19. Naturally, said it again. We did it again. I think this is a great move. They definitely need a replacement for Keyshawn Nixon. He's going to be great in the return game, great in the slot, great as a safety. And, who knows if they end up finding that he's actually a really good fit in the corner room. Who cares? That's going to be a great fit. They have multiple roles where Cooper can succeed in. So naturally, I think you could still go BPA down the board if you still find a top tier corner that slips. You could say, hey, you know what? We now know our exact role for Cooper DeJean. And I love that. At pick 20 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they selected Leatu Latu Edge out of UCLA. I think this is another really good selection. this is a team that is going to be looking to move on from their veteran edge rusher in Shaq Barrett. But I do think Law 2, with the statistics he's had, is incredible. He's 265, great arm length. So he has the measurables, right? And then he has the statistics as well. So, that's there. The only big issue with Law 2, in my opinion, is one, I think very similar to KT, a lot of his success has actually come against, I don't really feel like he's been the one to produce NFL winning reps. And I know that's an extremely huge statement. That's a huge claim. But that's been my one thing that's holding me back from Law 2. I'm just when I see his games, part of me feels deep down inside that I don't trust him to win at that same rate or remotely close at the next level. But at pick 20, with the measurables I talked about, with the production that he's had, and again, the one issue is probably his neck. That's why he ended up leaving Washington. That's worth taking the risk. Again, he ends up slipping in my mock drafts, but I make sure this guy will never slip out of the first round for me. And if his medicals go negative, he could be someone who does slip out of the first round. Buccaneers are trying to move on from the veterans they have. This is a great way to do that. At pick number 21, the Indianapolis Colts select Kool-Aid McKinstry. I've made this pick myself as if Kool-Aid somehow, some way, like the witches allow somehow for Kool-Aid to slip this far, I'm going to be all for it. I love Jalen Jones. He was a top 32 player for me last year. Ends up slipping to the 7th round, being selected by the Colts. And he's been doing a good job there. Wasn't a huge fan of Juju Brents, to be fair, but, Juju's still been very solid. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be a massive plus. And PFF was one of the ones first to say this. Going corner is never a bad idea. You always need more corners. Corners get injured. Corners get tired. A matchup's not good. So there's never a bad corner selection. And I think Kool-Aid, especially for the value, is absolutely incredible. At pick number 22, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Troy Fautanu. Very much a bulky pick here. He's probably going to kick to the interior of the offensive line. That's where I have him. He's sitting at 28 on my board, which, yes, y'all can see that. 28 on my board as an interior offensive lineman. It works so well because he's a very athletic tackle that will probably be a guard transfer. It fits exactly what the management wants, and honestly, I do think it's a pretty solid need. I'd prefer Graham Barton in this equation because I love that center versatility, but you can't complain. This guy's a true left tackle, so he has potential to also fill in there, and then you're also going to be kicking him to guard. So, again, you really, with Graham, we all know he's going to be interior. I don't really trust him to be a true tackle. Troy Fautanu, it's a great selection. I don't know why I'm overcomplicating things. At pick 23, the Rams select Amarius Mims. I just personally would switch Mims and Latham just for the fact that I love the storyline, but the Rams would be blessed to have Amarius Mims. You'd be probably kicking him to left tackle, however. So, he's a project because of the fact that, he hasn't played that many games. But I love Amarius Mims. Would be a huge fan of him going to the Rams because, again, offensive line, build through the trenches first, then go out. At pick number 24, the Buffalo Bills select Brian Thomas Jr. I think, honestly, if this does happen, one, he's a really good wide receiver, too. This is going to be a good pick on its own. But what makes this pick even more special, I think he's the perfect selection for Kansas City. And Buffalo versus Kansas City is kind of a big rivalry. So naturally, you're going to be disarming your competitor with somebody who is a perfect fit for them while also boosting your own roster. I think this is a great pick. At pick 25, the Kansas City Chiefs select Keon Coleman out of Florida State. That's not a very Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver. However, the value is there. And, he's definitely going to add some new opportunities. I don't know. There's that DJ Khaled meme where he's like, brother, this sounds like a new opportunity or something like that. But regardless, he's going to be opening up some new spots in the offense for, some better shots down the field that are going to be a little bit more contested. He's never been able to generate route separation. I don't know why people thought that he was like some elite route runner at the start of the year when he was mossing dudes and just hurdling guys over the middle of the field. Like, this narrative's never changed. He's a really good receiver. I don't get it. Like, he was one of my top, I think he was number 34 coming into the year after transferring from Michigan State. Big fan of him there. I wanted him to work a little bit more on the nuances of route running and release in terms of his footwork, etc. And I don't think he did a very good job of that this year. However, he still has such a phenomenal foundation. And the Chiefs, I would love to see how their offense evolves with Keon Coleman there. I don't think that it's going to be a instant shoe-in and he's going to be an instant impact. But I do think this is a long-run play that might be beneficial for the offense rather than being a little bit more gadgety and take shots and screens. Like, I would love to see a little bit more of a balanced attack with Keon Coleman there. At pick 26, the Philadelphia Eagles select Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. If they somehow, some way can actually pull this off, I will be crying tears of joy for Philly. You know, James Bradbury should be gone. Terrion Arnold, I think he has a different skill set than Kool-Aid McKinstry. So when I have Terrion above Kool-Aid, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's better. It just means he's better in the perfect role. And I love projecting corners with high IQ and football and like field instincts. That's, to me, kind of like my bread and butter. That's why I love JPJ, my number 2 player last year. Like, I feel like he's very similar play style wise to JPJ. Doesn't have the length to probably make up for it, but I think he might be a little more athletic instead. He's 6 foot, just under 200 pounds. To me, he'd be a great fit on the Eagles. He was with Eli Ricks last year, so you have that as well for the future. This team has a lot of young corners, but you naturally need, I said naturally again, did it again. You need to have a consistent secondary in order to remain relevant in the playoffs and, in general. And Terrion Arnold would be an excellent addition. At pick 27, the Detroit Lions selected Braylon Trice, my number 5 player in the class. I love it. He's going to be a very nice addition next to Aiden Hutchinson, who's been phenomenal this year. People have been trying to say he's a dirty player. This idea, it just really depends if you believe the hip drop tackle is dirty. I just think it's a dude trying to bring a dude down is what it is. It's a sucky way to get injured and seems to be a little bit more high risk. Yeah, but it's a contact sport. I mean, you do what you can to keep the sport while also making sure players remain relatively safe. A dude who's just trying to bring a guy to the ground, that's a conversation for another day. Braylon Trice is a great compliment to Aiden Hutchinson. I could go on and on about how much I love Aiden Hutchinson, but regardless, Braylon Trice, even though I do think maybe Chop Robinson, who has a little more upside, maybe a little bit more complimentary rather than 274 and essentially 270, you could have that nice balance of size as well as speed there with Hutchinson and Chop. Who's going to care? He's a really good run defender, maybe not the most bendy guy in the world, but so far that framework's kind of worked really well in Detroit, and I'd be perfectly fine with it. At pick 28, the Houston Texans selected Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. This is the first pick that does surprise me. I think the Texans, it really depends on what Trevor believes in terms of his rankings, because I believe he's the one who ends up doing primarily the overall rankings for the draft board. And if so, T'Vondre Sweat is very low compared to what it would require for selection 28 here. For me, I think the Texans need defensive interior help, secondary help for the future, another corner across from Derek Stingley for the long run. You could look to add a third edge rusher because, again, edge rush rotation, keep guys healthy, keep guys fresh. They're already doing well as it is. Could be even better. And then maybe I would consider someone who could play one of those interior positions. If I were to go offensive line, though, I'd probably go Graham Barton because of the fact that I can use him at left tackle, center, guard. I like the versatility and the experience, but Jordan Morgan's a talented player. I just think that would be much lower on my priority list, even with the guys who are even though he's a good player, I still think there's better value with better players there for the Texans. You could even go after wide receiver there because you still do have some really good options on the board, like Emeka Egbuka, who has experience with CJ Stroud. But to be fair, when you look at CJ Stroud, it doesn't look like he needs guys he has cohesion with or any form of chemistry because he develops it pretty damn fast. At pick 29, the Dolphins select Tyler Guyton. Another one that's a little bit more of a head scratcher for me. Tyler Guyton is a really high upside tackle, right? He has shown a ton of potential. He's very athletic. He's a mauler. But when he's a right tackle, you'd have to essentially kick him to guard in the short run and then hope that he'd be the left tackle of the future. That's where I have a little bit of an issue. Again, you do have Graham Barton here, who goes to the Cowboys next. We'll talk about that in a second. But Graham Barton, with 3 interior offensive linemen up for free agency, probably the one position. It's a Cooper DeJean to Green Bay, except for Dolphins on the offensive line. So It's Green Bay's secondary with Cooper DeJean is the same way, or is the same thing as the Dolphins' offensive line with Graham Barton. Just that versatility, I love. I don't know if Tyler Guyton really works out as a left tackle in the long run. It's a big risk for me, but if you see the risk being worth it, let's just say there's a lot of interior offensive linemen, maybe the Dolphins see on day 3 that can actually start for him, then take the swing. Prove us wrong, right? Because left tackle is one of the most valuable positions. Of course, it's not Tua's blind side, but it is what it is. Pick number 30, the Dallas Cowboys then select Graham Barton. Spoiled it a second ago. Graham Barton I love his versatility. I keep saying that, but there's a lot of players in this class that are not pigeonholed into one role. He's going to be a great center. And the Dallas Cowboys have built a lot of their whole entire brand has been maybe based off of the playmakers they have and the quarterbacks. But we all know the Larry Allens of the world, obviously the Zach Martins, Travis Frederick, Tyron Smith. Like, you have so much of your franchise is owed to your offensive line. And this is just a great way of making sure that, your identity remains intact. Again, I would prefer a left tackle, but at the same time, there's not really somebody that comes to mind that would be worth it here at pick 30. Great move for Dallas. At pick 31, the San Francisco 49ers select Ennis Rakestraw Jr., corner out of Missouri. I have quite a few corners above Ennis, but of course, I'm still regrading Ennis to make sure his grade is up to date. Talented corner. He's 6 foot, 190, a little bit on the smaller side for me. Of course, it's not bad. It's not a negative by any stretch. 188, 6 foot, but it's not a massive positive either. I just fell in love with a couple other corners, so I have them a little bit above it. I love the idea, though, for corner for the Niners because it's a team that has very few issues, right tackle and corner being pretty much the only two I would really focus on. At pick 32, the Baltimore Ravens select Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. We're closing in on the second round here. We'll speed this up for some fun's sake here. But Quinyon Mitchell, ball hawk, I think the Ravens, especially having him be mentored under Marlon Humphrey, would be a great move. Let's haul ass through this second round. The Carolina Panthers select Ladd McConkey. For me, I think you'd have similar impact with Jermaine Burton, and you could probably get that in the third round, or you could, trade back and get that and have that chemistry with that big playability. But love to see Ladd McConkey getting the respect he deserves. Okay, so this is basically showing an extra pick for the teams that didn't get a first rounder. I'm fine with that. I like that. Pick 59, the Cleveland Browns select Tez Walker, 6'2", 200 pounds, 6'2", 200. Good build. He's going to complement Amari Cooper there. They ended up trading away Donovan Peoples-Jones, DPJ, and this is a great player to replace that role. Tons of upside, but I personally have this unbelievable desire to just continue pairing him up with Drake Maye. Unfortunately, Drake Maye is on one of the teams that doesn't really need a wide receiver. So, I don't think he's going to go to Washington anytime soon. So I do think this actually could end up happening in the real draft because it fits an exact need with really good value. That is going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. And Trevor, thank you for giving us some good content to take a peek at. See you on the far side.